In the Victorian era, like now, hair was an important marker of feminine sensuality and style, but it also had other uses, both sentimental and practical. Victorians made all sorts of keepsakes with their own hair or the hair of deceased loved ones. These keepsakes included pincushions, lockets, brooches, and even entire family trees made out of hair.
My interest in hair jewelry came from the fact that I'm a nurse and I have an interest in Civil War medicine, and medicine leads to what happens after all the guys came back from war, and the memorials and tributes that were done for them, and hair work falls into that category. When men went off to war, they would often take a lock of their hair and put it on the back of a brooch with their picture on the front, and as a keepsake while they were gone. And then if they didn't come home, that became a memorial piece for them. But hair was not always just for memorial pieces, and children, they would take children's hair and weave it into things, and family pieces to make trees of life, like this one, where you see several different shades of hair color, and it's woven into a tree pattern, so you can add branches on as you need to, and that would indicate that would be a tree of life. So this would not be a memorial piece. It would be done as people were living and contributing hair to it.
Some of this work was very high quality. Look at the intricacy of the hair work on this particular brooch. Not only is the hair inside the brooch braided, the delicate ornamentation on the outside of the brooch is also made of human hair, twisted to look like wires.
These pieces, this one is probably mourning because of the black enamel around the outside and the writing. It's one person's hair, and the black enameling makes me think this one is truly a mourning piece. So after the person passed away, they cut a lock of their hair as a remembrance. And they would also make these into watch fobs, earrings, necklaces, all kinds of other things. These two could be mourning, but they could just be memorials. They're one person's hair inside. This one is in a gold case. This one, the framework around it is actually hair also. So, and the way this was done, they would weave around a center piece and then carefully remove the centerpiece. So this is actually like a hollow tube of hair. And hair lasts long. It's very resilient, and it's still hair all these years later.
So, was hair jewelry only worn by the middle and upper classes and only by women, or did men and lower class people ever wear hair jewelry?
Men definitely wore hair jewelry. A lot of hair was woven into watch fobs. That's a common thing that you find is watch fobs. So men would have these fobs of hair, and that would be mainly, fobs were mainly middle and upper classes, because first of all, it implied they had a pocket watch, which a lower class man wouldn't have, a nice gold pocket watch. And to make one of those would take talent and a good technique to do it. As far as the fancy jewelry that we have here, the different pieces that are made like that, those would be definitely for upper classes, because the cases were gold and they cost money, and to have it done so well also cost money if you couldn't do it yourself. Lower classes would have hair jewelry, not like this though. They would have maybe just they'd braid it themselves, so the edges would be frayed and kind of ratty. They wouldn't have the nice solutions to put it in so it doesn't get so frizzy, and they just might tuck it behind a picture. Again, they didn't have as much jewelry to use with the hair as an upper class woman would have.
Victorians even used their own hair on children's dolls. This doll belonged to 6-year-old Hilda Peterson in the 1890s. The doll was made with hair from Hilda's own first haircut. So, can you tell us a little more about Hilda?
Hilda, the creepy doll in the children's bedroom. The doll is, she was made in 1904, the doll was made. Hilda was born in 1898, and she got her first haircut around 1903, 1904, and what her parents did was take her hair and use it as the hair on the doll. So it's really Hilda's hair, and Hilda was very much alive at the time. It was a doll she played with, and so her great niece had the doll and donated her to the house. But they would do things like that. That wasn't totally uncommon. That was less common than making jewelry out of the hair, but they would use it for doll's hair. They would also use children's teeth when children lost their first teeth. I've never seen that, just in pictures, but that would be really creepier than the hair, I think, to see real teeth inside a doll's head.
Victorians collected their own hair to use for various purposes. Collected hair could be used in hair pieces or pin cushions. The natural oils in hair kept pins from getting rusty. Here is a receptacle a Victorian lady would have used to collect her own hair.
And this piece is a hair receiver. So it comes apart like that. A lady would have it on her dresser, and when she would brush her hair, instead of throwing the hair out of the brush into the trash, they would poke it into the little hole on the top to store it inside, and that way they could use it when they're doing their updos to poof it up to add volume to their hair.
A lock of hair, usually the hair of a deceased person, could also be used in jewelry. This jewelry could be made by amateurs or professional jewelers and worn to help preserve the memory of a loved one. Here is the painting of a woman from the 1860s in full mourning dress. Note the hair brooch she is wearing at her neck to preserve the memory of her loved one. The hair jewelry would have been worn in conjunction with full mourning dress. In the Victorian era, mourning could last a few months to several years, depending on the relationship to the person who died. Okay, so can you say more about the stages of mourning dress for a Victorian era widow? What would this woman have worn at each stage of mourning?
Okay, so mourning was definitely the burden of the woman. They carried the extreme ways of the mourning dress. Victorian widow in 1860s, they had still the big hoop skirts, the corset. When her husband, at the time of death, she would go into deep black. It would be dull black, like cotton, and covered with crepe, which was a silky, dark material that was covered in little flecks of black that came off in her face and eyes and nose. It was nasty stuff. The veil over her face was crepe. If you would see her in public, which wouldn't be very much in that first year because she'd mainly be at home. Family might come to visit, very close friends, but mainly she would be at home with her grief. If she was outside, she would have her face covered with a black veil, all in dull black, hands covered in black gloves for the whole first year and a day after the death of her husband. The second year after the death of her husband, she could start adding a little ivory to her collars and cuffs, and she could start wearing shiny black. She could wear black taffeta or silk, and she didn't have to wear the veil if she was out in public. Still a black bonnet. She could maybe add a widow's cap, which was white. She'd have a white cap on her head with the black bonnet over the top of that. And the third year after the death of her husband, she could start wearing colors of gray and lavender and brown, and start going to a few more social events. And after 3 full years of mourning dress, then she was considered out of mourning, and she could resume social activities and remarry if she chose. Her husband, on the other hand, if she died first, would wear, he would just put a black band of crepe around his top hat, or wear a little black rosette on his collar for about 3 to 6 months, and then he was free and clear, could remarry. And probably the reason for that was he was responsible for the income of the family. He had to go back out and support the family. Oftentimes women died in childbirth, so a man was left with a newborn baby and 5 other kids, and he needed someone to care for them. So the quickest thing to do, just remarry. So he had a new mother and housekeeper, probably marry someone younger than himself to have more children, because so many children died before the age of 6 of all the different diseases that were going on at the time.